Lead General Pat, the man that created the PB group, the man that fights for peace. Is he really fighting for peace, or does he have other motives? Lead General Pat is from the year 1400 BC. It is told he was created by the gods of Nyarlathotep and to bring peace and leadership to the civilization of Nyarlathotep. He soon created the PGP, Pat's Group of Peace, which later in time becomes known as the PB Group. The civilization of Nyarlathotep considered Pat as a prophet for their gods. He battled against the cult group Devar's Craw and defeated them. Pat was supposedly killed in the late 1500s by remaining Devar's Craw worshippers. Pat was later seen alive in the 1700s as he continued the PGP. The British Empire invaded Saarland and Pat attacked their forces. Soon after, the British Empire managed to supposedly kill him. In the late 1800s, Pat was seen alive again. He had two brothers, Alec and Richard, that were created to be Pat's protector. It was supposedly that Alec was summoned first and then Richard. Their birthdays were confirmed, and Pat took the year 1894 as to fit in and was supposedly the year he returned. In the ending of 1927 and beginning 1928, Pat built his own facility in the mountain regions of Niren. He done so secretly from NARP, the group he was recruited into back in 1921. During his time of building his tower facility, he traveled to Niren to give speeches and recruit people for his side. Building a military group to enforce peace, he had people join from Niren and also soon to be defeated Malin rebels. Pat didn't like what NARP was doing and wanted out of the group as NARP was killing Malin civilians. The NARP group was ran by a brute leader known as Maximus Leburn. General Leburn tortured captive rebels for fun and would get them to give locations of places he wanted to know. Pat didn't like this. During a mission in Malin, Pat caught a Malin rebel and ordered him to surrender. The rebel told Pat that they didn't know why NARP was attacking them in the first place, as everyone was against Severit. Before the rebel could say more, General Leburn shot the rebel. Pat was mad and wanting to know why the general wanted to attack other groups that were fighting for the same cause, but was quickly told to head back to base. As Corporal Pat was considered General Leburn's best officer, he wanted nothing to do with this complete takeover of Saarland, and so he thought of leaving. Most of the NARP troops looked up at Pat as a great leader and a far better one than General Leburn. Most people in the NARP group would actually consider going to Corporal Pat instead of General Leburn. While walking in the courtyard with General Leburn asked Pat to lead the battle to attack Gruskia. And he asked Pat, "Do you know Gruskia well?" And he goes, "Yes, that is my homeland." Then General Leburn tells him, "Good, then we should have no problems then." Pat's anger grew even more for General Leburn as he asked him to attack his homeland. Time was running out. After completing his hidden facility in Niren Mountains and thinking of a way to finally leave NARP for good, the Severits sent an agent to deliver a letter to NARP. After General Leburn read the letter, there was a print at the end reading TAP, T-A-P. The general thought this could be the work of Corporal Pat as a traitor working for the Severits. As Pat comes to the general's office to give a report, General Leburn confronts Pat and threatens to kill him and tells him to admit he is a Severit spy. Not knowing where the letter came from, Pat says, Leburn pulls out his pistol and Pat has no choice but to run and leave the compound. A few hours after he left NARP group, Pat wanted to test out his troops for battle for the first time and wanted to get revenge on General Leburn. So he travels to 01B NARP facility and attacks the base to put an end of NARP's attacks on the sector. During his attack on the NARP facility, his troops find a man in a cell and call for Pat to check on the prisoner. Pat was shocked at who it was. It was his younger brother, Richard Morgan. Pat takes Morgan and then gives him a brown trench coat that he was currently wearing at the time. He asks, does he wish to fight for him and join his side? Richard agrees and takes his hand as he's pulled up out of the cell. Pat then leads him to the helicopter and take him back to the facility. After hearing about General Burns' death and the Severates destroying the 01A facility, Pat decided to let the Severates and the NARP battle it out with each other while he can work on his new group. After having his group fully completed, Pat became well known as Lead General Pat. Soon after making it back to the PB tower, a Severate agent entered the facility to try to stop what Pat was doing there. As for Pat had his own secret force members, and he allowed them to deal with the situation of the Severate spy. Having the laser satellite finished and launched into space, Pat began working on another project of his own, one that will lead the PB group into many victories: the Trigete. Pat overseen the building of the Trigete on Roy Island, which was a prototype standing at 25 meters tall. It was a armored battle tank. Not long enough, the same agent that infiltrated the PB tower also came to the laser satellite facility. Richard Morgan fought with the agent, and Lee General left to the other facility he was constructing, known as the Lagran facility. At this time, Lee General Pat wanted to know who this man was, and later informed from his brother that he is a Severate agent to stop the PB group. At the Lagran facility, the same Severate agent infiltrates the facility and gets captured for Pat to interrogate him. He finds that the agent's name is Brian from his brother Richard and interrogates Agent Brian. After the interrogations, Pat tells Brian that revenge will be taken on the Severates, and that even his brother Richard wants revenge. During Pat's time at the Lagran facility, he overlooked the creations of the Lagran project. He was interested in cell DNA, but had other focuses to attend to. One of Pat's scientists, Evan Armist, was killed by the Lagran. The Lagran was created after the PB soldiers as a super soldier that obeyed orders without questioning. The project was a success, but still had lots of testings to be done. Eventually, a Phase 3 Lagran was created in the later years, and becomes Pat's personal guard. Another project brought to Lead General Pat's attention was the L-Droid project, created by Gerard Vandeleur. The L-Droid project was another way to keep casualties down, and also to put fear into their enemies. Pat liked the idea of it, and saw demos of the droids at the other PB facility Novarok on Relista Island. In 1940, the PB group discovers a rare metal, a metal which changes the future of the PB group forever. Discovered by Viceroy Viet of the PB group, the metal is a very strong mold bond after it cools. Once the shape mold is cooled, nothing can melt it down again. This was very big to the PB group, and Pat ordered it to be used for the new Trigete line of version 3, and soon to all their other vehicles. Commander Viceroy Viet discovered that the rare metals was also located in Europe in small areas, and Pat had Commander Kosrick plan an operation there. World War II had broken out, and things were getting tight in Europe. The only thing left to do was have a treaty signed. Lee General Pat himself flew to Germany to sign a treaty with Hitler to not attack the PB group, as they were not part of the war. Hitler agreed and signed the treaty. Things were looking good for the PB group. Pat was thinking of the future and wanted to explore the depths of space. He did accomplish launching a satellite out into space, so he thought, why not build a ship to launch out into space? So he began making ideas. Around this time, the PB group finally taken out Colonel Kane of the NARP group, and NARP was gone out of Malin for good. The fight for peace was almost complete in Sololand. The only thing left was Severate. As it was getting closer to the end of World War II, the Nazis attacked one of the PB group mining sectors, and Pat ordered a fleet of Trigetes to tend to the matter. The Nazis were no match for the fleet of Trigetes, and the PB group took out the Nazi force in the area. Pat was disgusted with the betrayal of the Germans, and Pat ordered the attack on Germany. This was the PB group's full-fledged attack outside of Sololand. While their attack over Germany was a success, Hitler was founded and captured by the PB group. Lee General Pat confronted him and told him the PB group stood for peace. After so, Lee General gave Hitler over to the PB high-power brute, and was never seen again. At this time, as the PB group was being successful on their projects, the Severed agent Brian infiltrates the PB facility to confront Lead General Pat. As Pat battled the agent, Pat was kicked off the side of the building rooftop and the agent escaped. Pat was soon discovered alone by General Kazran, the head of the PB high-power brute of the PB group. Pat slowly tried to get up, and General Kazran took his pistol out and shot Pat in the head, saying to him, "I am now in charge of the PB group." From there, General Macris Kazran took rank of Lead General and ran the PB group for a year. His plans was soon interrupted by the same Severed agent Brian. Lead General Kazran fights the agent and suffers from a gunshot wound, falling off the rooftop of one of the PB facilities. As Kazran lays on the ground, he hears the sound of footsteps coming close to him. It was none other than Lead General Pat himself. Pat looks down at Kazran and pulls out his pistol and aims down at Kazran's head to say, "Traitor," and Pat fires. It turns out that Lead General Pat had a Leldroid clone of himself, and that was the one that Kazran shot. Pat watched from the background of his private facility of every move that Kazran made till this point. Pat was back in action again, running the PB facility as if he was never gone, putting fear in all the PB group members that there is no betraying him. In the later years, Pat is informed that a man that fits the description of his former leader, General LeBurn, was seen in the near desert. Pat then gathers his troops for the attack of the base, and takes a fleet of Trigete version 3 with him. As Pat gets closer to the bunker, a man comes out. That man is none other than General LeBurn. The general yells at the attacking force, and Pat gets out on top of the head of the Trigete. LeBurn sees it as Pat gets angry. LeBurn tries to reason with Pat, telling him Solant is Narp's future, and that Pat should join forces with Narp. Pat tells him no, he will not join forces with him, and that the PB group fights for peace and the future of humanity. Pat then orders the attack on Narp. Soon after, a chopper that General LeBurn is flying takes off out of the bunker, and a Trigete shoots it down, killing General LeBurn and ending the last of Narp. After a few years of trying to get connected with the laser satellite, Richard Morgan gets his revenge over Severed and destroys the Severed capital city. A devastated loss for Severed. Pat knew it had to be done, as he watches one of the monitors of the destructed city. As Pat oversees the construction of the Space Endeavor, a group of remaining Severed forces infiltrate the PB Tower 2 and stole the connector disk to the laser satellite, and have it fire atop of the PB Tower 2, destroying the tower completely, with the Severeds hoping they killed Lead General Pat in the process, but Lead General was at the time in Bruskia. Pat figures it's time to give back Solant to the people, and Pat orders his troops to overtake the rest of Severed. In 1963, the Endeavor is prepared for launch into space. Pat and what troops have decided to go with him would further mankind's future. Anyone left that decided not to go would be left to go live free in Solant, and the PB group was no more on Earth. 2030. 67 years have passed since the PB group was diminished on Earth. Pat was tracking a parasite that broke off a planet as an asteroid and was coming toward Earth. Pat tried to warn anyone that was left of the previous PB group, as they were the only ones that had contact with the PB group in space. Not many were alive in this time, and as it would seem, the Severeds rebuilt. The Severeds are under control of a general named Mark Anden, and he would see fit that Lead General doesn't make it back to Earth. As Pat tries to make contact with the Severed General to warn him of the deadly parasite, the General tells Pat, "You are not welcome back here. If you even land here, I will enforce my troops to kill you." Pat tells the General about the parasite, but General Anden tells him, "You were probably the one that made the damn thing." Pat then takes a small shuttle down to Earth and lands somewhere in Nirn. He takes refuge in his old PB tower in the mountain region. There he makes contact with someone that was loyal to him, along with the PB group. Warren. As Pat rebuilds his underground facility under the PB tower, Pat and some PB scientists are researching development of the parasite, looking for a way to destroy it. They already did research on the parasite before, as they already found the location of the source planet and found out that the parasite is deadly. The parasite will absorb any life resources and sometimes even overtake a living organism and mutate it. After Pat found a way to destroy the parasite, Pat had to build a refinery to construct a bomb that can eliminate a large area of the parasite. As the bombs were completed and almost ready to launch, a new severed agent barges into the room where Lead General Pat was. And Pat tells the agent this is the only way to kill the parasite, as the agent lowers his gun from pointing at Pat and asks, "How?" A group of severed soldiers infiltrate the facility. They yell for Agent Ben to get out of the room as they throw a high-powered grenade into the room and seal the door closed, trapping Lead General Pat in the room. The bomb goes off, destroying the facility completely, and the Severeds thinking that Pat was finally killed. 6 months later, Pat returns. He was badly scorched in the explosion, and that he had to wear a half face mask until his face could heal. Soon Warren contacts Lead General over the radio asking that a severed agent wants to meet him. Pat accepts the meeting and tells Warren to bring him to the facility, sack over head and hands tied. Agent Ben comes into Pat's control room where his sack is removed off his head. Pat asks Ben, "What do you want and why do you wish to see me?" Ben tells Pat he didn't set the bombs off and didn't know of the Severed troop attack. Pat then turns around for Ben to see his face. "Do you realize what you and your friends did to me?" "All of the bombs were already set to be deployed and take out this parasite, and then your friends destroy it all," Pat says. Ben tells Pat he didn't want this to happen. Pat asks Ben if he wishes to fight for peace, and to help him reconstruct his refineries again to help take out this parasite. Ben slowly accepts Pat's offer, but still has suspicions of him. "We finally did it, my friend. The bombs are ready for deployment, and we can launch them now. With your help, we have now the ability to save humanity. I am glad you have chosen the right path, my friend." As he tells Ben, after the missiles have launched, Ben steps outside of the facility. But not long, the facility is blown up from a Severed missile attack, killing Pat inside and leaving Ben on the ground unconscious. Severed troops come to the facility and capture Ben and search for a body to try to confirm a kill and locate one in the destructed place. This, no doubt, had to be the body of Lead General Pat. After a few days of the missile attack, General Andon is confronted by Warren. Warren tells Andon Pat's bombs worked and most of the parasite is gone in the area. Andon says they did, but he is still a madman, and you know that. Warren then takes a star dagger out and throws it at the general's neck, killing him instantly and revenging Pat's death. 2078. Years have passed since the death of Lead General Pat. Warren and Ben joined up working together to create their own PMC group. The world is a complete wasteland now ever since the parasite retaken over the zoned areas of Solent that Pat saved before. Ben receives a letter for him to travel to a camp outside of one of the protected dome cities. As he approaches the camp, Ben finds it to be some kind of cult group. Ben is led inside one of the tents, and sitting in front of a fire is a man sitting with a hood over his head. The man looks up and smiles at Ben and pulls his hood back, revealing his face. It was Lead General Pat. Pat is finally back and in full motion, but he still has the goal of getting rid of the parasite. Pat asks Ben, "Are you still on my side for peace?" Ben tells Pat that he is, and Pat gives him the mission objectives to complete for him. Soon after Ben completes getting the refineries built and getting the missiles ready to deploy and destroy the parasite, Ben asks Pat, "How did you survive the attack of the Severeds many years ago, and even the attack when I first met you?" Ben tells Pat, "The Severeds found your body burnt." "Well, my friend, that was not me, as it was a scientist of mine. I managed to make it out of the rubble. But I can tell you this. I am not an ordinary man. I was brought into this world to bring peace and leadership. At that point, Ben didn't know who Pat was, or even what he was. Pat orders the missiles to fire, and they are launched. Soon after that, Pat escorts Ben outside of the PB tower. Lead General Pat tasks Ben his last objective of finding Earth crystals, and Pat already has crystals from the other planet he's been to. Pat and Ben travel to a cave just outside of the old PB tower. Once going inside, the universe of the cave is summoned to a white room that Pat calls the Unknown, or the Void. There, that sits right in front of them, is an arch. Pat then inserts the crystals onto the two stands by the arch, which creates a portal. Just as Pat tells Ben the future of Earth is now in his hands, Brian comes into the Unknown and points his gun at Pat, telling him to stop right there. As Brian gets off the first shot, Ben dives in front of Pat, absorbing the bullet, and Pat uses a force push on Brian as he goes flying back. Pat then quickly walks up to Brian and tells him, "Go save your friend." And Pat walks away and up to Ben as he is bleeding. Pat kneels down to Ben and tells him, "Thank you, my friend. You will always be loyal to me." And Pat stands up and rushes through the portal before it closes. At that point, Pat is never seen again. This is the ending of the know-abouts of Lead General Pat. Nobody knows what his destination was. This concludes, was Pat a madman, or the savior of peace?